in today's video, we're gonna go through our natural development sequence. So it's a warm-up. We do this at the beginning of every Explore and Foundations class. So it can usually take you about anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how fast you kind of want to move through it. So we're gonna start with some breathing exercises. So you're just gonna start by building that canister awareness. So really starting to build up that diaphragm. So laying comfortably on your back, you're gonna start with your 6-second inhale and a 6-second exhale, only moving your belly and keeping your chest as still as possible. So you can stay here for about 3 or 4 breaths, and then you're gonna start working that breath nice and active. And what I mean by that is you're gonna push that belly up towards the roof, out the sides, as well as down into the floor, and try to imprint that spine and your tailbone on the floor. It's a tricky skill, but keep working at it and you'll be able to get it. So after a few more of those breaths, we're gonna take your feet up. Keep those legs in a 90-degree angle. Try to keep your legs as jelly as possible, and still try to find that nice big belly breath. Again, you can stay here for about 3 or 4 breaths, not allowing that lower lumbar or that pelvis to tilt off the floor. You're still keeping this nice and neutral. And then when you're feeling nice and stable here, you're gonna start taking your feet down towards the floor. So here you wanna do this as slow as possible. So about 4 counts down and then 4 counts back up. So just start by dropping the heel to the floor and then bringing the heel right back up. You can alternate legs. If this is feeling too easy, you can start to extend the full leg. And if that still feels easy, you can start adding in the arms. Just really making sure that that lower lumbar, that small of your back, is not arching off the floor when you extend. So none of this. Really make sure you're nice and strong through that trunk. And you can stay there for about anywhere from 60 to 90 seconds, maybe do 10 per leg. All right, now we're gonna go into some glute bridges. So you're gonna posteriorly tilt the hips into the floor, and then you're gonna lift that sacrum, your lower lumbar, and then each vertebra one by one up off the floor, squeezing your glutes and activating those hamstrings. You should have no pain in that lower lumbar, and lifting up as high as you can. And then as you come down, you're gonna go into exact reverse, laying each vertebra one by one back down, making sure your lower lumbar touches the floor first, and then your sacrum. Relax, and then go through it again. You wanna make sure that these are nice and slow and controlled, really trying to connect to that spine. And here you can do anywhere from about 10 to 20. Make sure you're exhaling on the way up, and then inhaling on the way down. And then when you've got all of those, you're gonna bring your knees in towards your chest, your hands come up overhead, and you're gonna rock yourself into a seated position. So here we're gonna create a cradle with our spine and not allowing our lower lumbar to slap on the floor when we come up. So you're gonna exhale, and then nice and controlled coming up. Relaxing your shoulders and your neck. There shouldn't be any tension there. And again, you can stay here for about 60 seconds, just really warming up that spine and that trunk. And then when we've gotten that, we're gonna go into our hip warm up. And you're gonna do your best to sit in this 90-90 position. You're gonna try to get both sit bones down on the floor. And if you can't and you're up here, that's okay. Just really try to get those hips down onto the floor. And then from here, you're gonna drive this knee down into the floor. It's gonna stabilize this glute. And then you're gonna lift this knee. Make sure that this hip stays still, You're really just trying to think about rotating that femur bone in that hip socket and not rotating through the trunk. So we're gonna do about 5 or 6 here. You don't wanna do too many. It's a lot of work for your hip. And then you can also then play with reversing that and lifting the foot. So still stabilizing, driving this knee down, firing up this glute, and then now lift this foot. It's tricky. If you need to assist your foot, go ahead, lift that. Just trying to keep your torso as still as possible and not letting this knee come up too much. So again, we can do about 5 on this foot as well. And then you could switch. Drive this knee into the floor, lift this knee up, do about 5 on this side, and then same thing on here, lift that foot, about 5 on that foot. And then when you've got those, we'll take it more dynamic, and we're gonna now start shifting from side to side. So pushing this knee down, lifting this knee up. Now you'll go all the way through the movement, all the way to the other side. You can have your hands behind you for support to help keep that trunk and that chest nice and tall and proud. You don't want to be rounding through this. All right, so stay nice and tall. And you're going to add on to this when you get here to come up, drive your glutes forward, squeeze, back down. You can do a few of those per side. And then you're going to add on to that by bringing a foot forward, lunging, coming back. Good. So when your hips are feeling nice and loose and warmed up, we're now going to go into our wrists. So you can come into quadruped, which is on all fours. Really make sure your knees are underneath your hips, your hands are underneath your shoulders, and that lower lumbar isn't just hanging out. You're going to really drive that belly button into the spine, have a nice neutral flat back. And then from here, you're going to spread your fingers nice and wide, and you're going to try to find your end ranges. So make sure your elbows are rotated in, shoulders are rotated down. Don't let those shoulders creep up. From here, you're going to lean forward, side to side. Just be very mindful that you're comfortably working to that end range and that there's no pain. You can do this here in this position for about 60 seconds and then rotate those hands out to the side. Okay, same thing. Now we're going to go side to side, trying to find that end range. About another 60 seconds here. Then rotate those hands all the way in towards your knees, or as best you can. And then you can start leaning back. Keeping those hands on the floor. You lean side to side a little bit as well. Again, trying to find that end range. And stay here for about 60 seconds. Then when you have that, you're going to now start taking your palms facing up. Lock your elbows out, shoulders down. And then start shifting side to side, forward and back. So when that starts to feel nice and warm, about 60 seconds, we're going to start going dynamic and start taking it palms down and palms up. So go palms down, palms back up. Again, just trying to load those wrists in that end range. And when those wrists are feeling pretty good, you tuck those toes, come on back. We're going to just shake out those wrists. And at the same time, we're stretching out that fascia in the bottoms of our feet. So then from here, you can now just start shifting your hips side to side. Really make sure that you're connecting every toe onto the floor. If those pinkies are still hanging out and not touching the floor, don't worry. The more you do this, the easier it will be to get those toes onto the floor. Good. And then we're going to go into a little bit of a tabletop position. So from here, we're gonna go back into our inverted position. We're gonna roll those shoulders back, have our hands directly underneath our shoulders, and our feet about hip width apart. Here, we're gonna open up our anterior chain and see if we can open up those shoulders a little bit more. So as you exhale, you're gonna squeeze your glutes, start driving your hips up towards the ceiling, and you're gonna lift up those hips as high as you can. And then as you inhale, you're going to come back down. These can be pretty tough on the shoulders if you're tight. So depending on how you feel is how many you'll do. So if you're pretty tight, just stick to about 3 or 4. But if you're feeling pretty good, then you can do about 5 to 10. But then you can also add in a little bit of a crab reach. Good. And the last one that we're going to do here is just continue opening up our hips a little bit. So we're going to come up to a high kneeling position. We're going to tuck our back toes. You're going to start with your left leg, bring your left leg forward with a slight posterior tilt in the hips. Make sure that you're not in a big anterior tilt. A little bit of a posterior. You're going to start now driving forward, really stretching here. Don't let that heel come off the floor. So as soon as that heel comes off, that's it, that's your end range. But you want to try to get as low as you can without losing too much here and keeping that heel on the floor. Come back up, go a little wider. Back up, a little wider, making sure that you can always see your toe. Try to drive that knee outwards. And then the last one you want to do is you want to really line up that heel and that knee, still facing forward, and then drive towards that toe. Good. And then do the same thing on the other leg. So right leg forward, lunge, come back with that foot a little wider. And then line that foot up with the heel, and again, lunge forward. And you can do that one about 2 times per leg. And then that's it. That's your natural development sequence. That should take you about 20 minutes to go through, and you can speed that up or slow that down, just depending on how your body's feeling that day. Have fun.